Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Careers in Public Service with Young Professionals. We have some Graham Center alumni here today to speak with us. Today we're going to have a moderate discussion with our panelists, followed by a Q&A. Please make sure to mute yourself, and then you can use the chat feature and raise your hand and send messages in the chat if you have any questions throughout. But we are going to go ahead and get started. If you guys all would like to just introduce yourself, the panelists.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gloria Li. I graduated UF in the spring of 2019, and then I moved to Tallahassee, worked for a bit in energy policy, which was my field. Back at UF, I studied environmental science, philosophy, and agricultural law. Thought I would become a lawyer, but ended up not yet. And then I came up to DC to do my master's in data science and in the policy school, specifically at Georgetown. And so I was really embroiled in energy and environmental data science, and I did some internships related to that. And now I'm currently working as a consultant for DoD in energy and environment and sustainability.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kayla Ratnasamy. I graduated from UF in the spring of 2021 with a degree in political science and minors in voice performance and Eastern European politics. Shortly after graduating, I connected with the Florida political director of the Biden-Harris campaign, and she helped me navigate the presidential personnel office for political appointments within the Biden-Harris administration. And she let me know of an opportunity at NASA to serve NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. And shortly after that, kind of put my hat in the ring and interviewed for a special assistant role to serve the administrator and more of a scheduling and support. And I joined NASA in July of 2021 after graduating, and I had been with NASA for 2 years. When 2 years kind of came around, I had noticed that it was really common for political appointees to transition with the administration. I had just felt like, wow, like this was a great 2 years for space and NASA as a whole agency, 11 years in a row of being the best workplace in the federal government. And I was just ready to move on to a bigger political team. So I joined Department of Education and now serve as the Deputy Director of Scheduling for Secretary Cardona.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priya Amilineni. My pronouns are she and her. Gloria and I graduated the same year, and I joke that I followed her kind of wherever she went after Gainesville. So I graduated in 2019 with degrees in biology and political science and a minor in health disparities in society. And then my first job was working in refugee policy for the state government in Tallahassee. And then after a couple years, won a fellowship to work in the Senate for Senator Padilla, which is when I moved up to DC at the beginning of last year. And have been doing that up until 2 weeks ago when I became a political appointee in the Biden-Harris administration, just like Kayla. But I work in essentially lobbying for AmeriCorps. I've only been doing that for 2 weeks though, so I can speak much more substantially to my experience in the state and the state government and on the Hill. I don't know what I'm doing yet at my new job.
Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. Starting with Kayla, if you could just talk about any pivotal experiences or internships you took up the opportunity of at the Graham Center that you feel like really shaped your future career path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had mentioned a little bit in my intro about connecting with the Florida political director for the Biden-Harris campaign. And I actually met her through my internship in Tallahassee through the Bob Graham Center. So in the spring of 2020, I did an internship in Commissioner Nikki Fried's office, the former commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And that was a really awesome internship. I know, as many of you know, that also unfortunate timing was the hit of the pandemic in March of 2020. But I at least got like a good solid 3 months of being in the office and just having such a unique opportunity within state politics and working in the legislative affairs office and just seeing how that works alongside with session. And that was really, really cool. I also had participated in the Bob Graham Civic Scholars Program, and that was a really unique research opportunity. Our topic for that year was on affordable housing, and that was super cool. And Gloria, Priya, and I were also student fellows. And actually, I think in 2019, we all had served in the executive board together too. So yeah, the Bob Graham Center, definitely a major home for me on campus when I was at UF, and it really kind of paved the way for me to get where I am here in DC.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I've definitely taken advantage of a lot of those opportunities as well. Gloria, if you could just answer the same question, what like Bob Graham Center experiences and internships you feel shaped your future career path?
Yeah, it is so hard for me to pinpoint specific ones. Like Kayla and Priya had mentioned, and I saw Caroline Nickerson also hop on. You know, all of us, for me, the Bob Graham Center is more like a family. I know that's kind of cliche, but while I did things like Ask You Scholars and I helped organize the Future of Florida Summit on tech and policy one year, and I did, yeah, you know, serve as part of the e-board and everything. What really lasted for me from the Graham Center is the fact that, unlike any other club I joined in college, a lot of my friends from the Graham Center are still my friends currently, and I see them all the time, including, you know, I see Kayla and Priya all the time in DC once they came up here. Others are constantly funneling. There's like a DC, Tallahassee, Gainesville kind of triangular connection where we just see the same people float in and out. And while life here is fairly transient for political or electoral and other reasons, it's really great to have that home in a group of people who are as passionate about public service as we were back in college.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Priya, if you could go ahead and answer the same question.
And so Paulina, just to make sure I'm answering the right question, it's what internships and could you
Other just experiences in general
Mhm.
from the Graham Center that you took advantage of that you feel like really like were pivotal to your future career path?
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Gloria and Kayla said. I think school is incredibly important, and my classes were incredibly important in informing the way that I work in health policy mainly, informing the way I look at health policy and really understanding kind of the broader philosophical aspects of the work that I do. But what was really helpful when I was like talking in interviews or trying to show that I had done work, especially for my first job, was really drawing on the specific experiences that I had at the Graham Center, which is like Gloria and Kayla both said, it was leading teams, it was like managing events and putting on events and all of those kind of hard skills that you can't get in classes, but you do get in an experiential learning space like you get at the Graham Center. I think I did like everything that the Graham Center had to offer. So for example, a really big one for me was doing you all call it something different than you called it when I was in college. It used to be the civic community and something else grants. It was a grant to do a public service project. So organizing a full public service project and applying for grant funding. Yes, Caroline, the 3 C's. But I think I don't know if it's still called that. But really doing that and having those tangible outcomes and having like that real life experience outside of the classroom is really essential.
Marianne just mentioned in the chat. It's called Ask You Scholars now. I'm actually part of like the cohort for the upcoming year, so definitely something I'm looking forward to. And then kind of building off that question, you guys are obviously all career professionals. What are some skills and other qualities that you think you look for in an applicant that sets them apart from others?
I can start if anyone wants to jump in, feel free. But I guess what I think about is pretty specific to my field of climate. I've done a fair amount of exploration in the field so far. I've worked for a large renewable energy generator. I've done internships in the House and in the White House doing kind of energy policy work, so federal level. And I've also lobbied adjacent on the state level. And so I've seen a lot of interest, and I've also worked with, youth and outreach and environmental education specifically. And I'll oftentimes have students reach out to me saying, the same thing. What are you looking for in an applicant for a job? And for me, it always comes back to, usually when someone tells me I'm interested in climate or I'm interested in this topic or industry, it's very broad. I really like to see focus in a direction, not so nuanced to be like a specific subfield necessarily, but I like to see experience where, if you're interested in climate, okay, what area have you explored? Have you done any internships or research or really any reading or writing even in that field? It usually, I feel like passion does come through very clearly to interviewers, at least in my experiences interviewing people at my company. And you can usually tell when someone's saying they're interested versus when they're really interested and, have put in the work and the exploration behind that.
And then Kayla, if you would like to jump in with your answer.
Yeah. I think kind of touching on Gloria's point too, I think in particular, what I have noticed with just some other younger political appointees, more early career, like recent graduates that are up here in DC as Schedule C appointees, a lot of them come from some really interesting, like local and state, just political community outreach, and I mean, campaign being huge. And I think being able to really draw from those community engagements and the outreach that they had done, and seeing just kind of how that translates well into the office and just executing and uplifting like Biden-Harris administration priorities. I think that is really integral in a lot of these jobs, like right out of college. And I think a lot of students are definitely the students that I have seen, like they do seek out opportunities within like the Gainesville community. And I think that's a really great opportunity and unique way of just getting your foot in the door and just getting kind of a taste of what government and public service really looks like. So.
Yeah, most definitely. And then Gloria, if you could go ahead on and answer the same question.
I think it's Priya's turn.
Yeah.
I like Gloria's answer though. So, so I haven't really been involved in direct hiring since I was in college when I was the president of the student fellows and like did like revamped kind of our like application process, which unfortunately Gloria and Kayla had to experience. But I will say I can speak from a very specific Hill perspective because I think that's a slightly different hiring process than I've experienced before in my previous jobs. There's certain political jobs where people want to see that you've done the work before. So I would say if you want to work on the Hill, which like I really did in college and I just like didn't know how to navigate it, you should try and get an internship before you graduate or right after you graduate, because that is a specific environment where people want to know that you've been in those spaces before they feel like you're okay to like even start at an entry-level job. It's not always true. I'm an example of an exception to that, but it's usually true.
So we're going to go ahead and open up questions to the audience. So if you guys want to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat, we can start calling on people.
I can go first and ask my question. I didn't see anything yet in the chat, and I don't know if there was a raise hand feature yet, Paulina. Oh, Scott here has a question. Scott, I'm going to let you go first because I'm the associate director here, and although I have a pressing question for each of them, I think you should get the chance to speak first.
Thank you. You can go first. I don't really mind, but I was just gonna say, coming from someone who doesn't have like a political science or like public policy focused degree, I heard someone had like a biology degree. Do you feel like that has affected, either made it easier and or harder, because you kind of stand out a little bit, but it's also like people might not think you have the foundations that others will.
Yeah, so I I think Gloria is a good person to answer this question too, because I had a degree in political science as well. I would not recommend doing that actually for if I were to go back. I don't know if I would have done a dual degree. But I didn't find that it affected me all. Like biology took up a lot more of my time and a lot more of my energy than my other degree, just because it was not for credits. But what I did is I had a lot of extracurriculars that showed that I was involved and interested in public service and policy spaces. So I did all of my research was policy based. I made sure to really dig into my extracurriculars that showed that in the future I would want to work in government. And honestly, no one has ever really asked me what my major is since I've graduated. I've only said it in spaces like this, and I have to like remember what I majored in. Um, I do like that I majored in a STEM field. I thought it was helpful to evaluating the world, and in health policy, it has helped in some ways because I understand more of the technical aspects of my work in ways that I don't think I would have otherwise.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
can.
Kayla. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry,
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I can chime in to add to that, Scott. I think Priya's totally hit the nail on the head with the observation that nobody asks you for your major after college. I remember being in college and, you know, trying to debating. I changed my major, I think 2 or 3 times. And then I ended up double majoring and having a minor. But at the end of the day, it's really what you do with your time. And a lot of your time is spent outside of your direct major classes. I also was able to combine a lot of my experiences. So I had a major in a science, environmental science, and in philosophy, but there were literally classes that satisfied both, like ecology of philosophy or something like that, that I took and was able to do both. And like Priya said, it also did help to stand out and be able to use that in my master's in data science to then inform my work when I intern at the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, because I was able to do a lot of the policy writing around very technical things like with NIST standards or quantum computing and things like that. So it really gives you, I think, a background where you're able to connect people, which is really what policy is about, connecting academia, government, and industry together in a way that makes sense.
Paulina, I'm going to jump in really quickly because we had a couple private questions directly to me and they build off of one that Caroline's asking. So this is in the realm of the fun stuff. Can you give us your favorite DC tips, secrets, recommendations for living there? And there's also a private question to me about your involvement in the DC Gator Club that comes from another fellow. She may want to expand on it, but we'd love to just hear some of that. And then we have other questions in the chat that Paulina will get to. Hi, Eliza, welcome.
Hello.
She was the one asking about Gator Club, so go for it.
Sorry, my headphones just turned off.
Oh.
But what I did wanted to ask was, so we as students, we get a lot of emails about the DC Gator Club, and I just wanted to know if you guys have had any experience working with any UF alum in that space. I'm the VP of community engagement for the fellows this year, so it was so nice hearing that all of you guys participated in the fellows. Yeah, thank you.
So I guess a couple things. When I first moved to DC, I guess this is like a nice story. It might have been maybe my like 3rd or 4th week in. I was literally getting on the Metro, Capital South, which is kind of close by to the Hill, and I see Gloria getting off, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Gloria, and the fact that we just connected right then and there, it's such a DC thing, because DC, when you live here for a couple years, you realize how small this town is, and how many the Gator community here is just so large and robust. But the fact that Gloria and I had connected then and there, I think it just made us even grow even more in our friendship up here in DC. So after that, I feel like we went to a DC Gator Club organized event. We went and watched a Gator football game, and that was super fun. But as far as like some other DC Gator programming, I know that they have had some really nice organized happy hours and networking events too, that we have all like gone and interacted with some other people. I will say within education, at NASA's political team more than 50% of us were from Florida, and of course, Administrator Nelson, huge Gator. But when I went to Ed, I was like, man, I don't know if I'll see any UF people. And interestingly enough, like I connected with a few UF alumni, like our press secretary, she went to UF. And there's a couple people in our general counsel office that went to UF. So I feel like the Gator Club kind of helped me, the DC Gator Club kind of helped me navigate that, and feeling like, oh, like I can still have this commonality while I'm here in DC and just be able to build on that. And it's like really nice to connect with people that went to UF at like maybe a different time than you did, and kind of get their insider tips of the city and just navigating that process.
Thank you so much.
You want to go? I'm trying to think of tips and tricks for living in DC. It's honestly not as big of a city as most other big cities. It was a relatively easy transition for me personally because I knew so many people coming here. There was a huge Gator network, even outside of the Gator Club. And it's like really, really easy to make friends with people, even if you weren't close with them in college. I did know Gloria and Kayla in college, but even if like you kind of just like tangentially knew them in college, because having that Gator connection does help. There's like lots of other really young people here. So I think like if folks have more specific questions like around housing or like other things, like maybe we can answer them later or stuff like that. But it's not a hard city to transition to as a young professional.
Yeah, I totally agree with both Priya and Kayla. My involvement with the Gator Club has been pretty much like going to football games and things. It's really cool up here because there is a huge age diversity in the Gator Club. So while there's a lot of fresh out of school, kind of recent grads, there's also like families and people who've been in DC for a while. So there's a really rich trove of like knowledge, institutional knowledge that you can draw from there. But beyond that, I guess my one DC tip would be in your first year to live next to a metro line. So I lived on the Red Line in DuPont Circle when I first got here, but it just like makes life a lot easier, and also get used to walking very far distances. Although I recall from UF, there tends to be a lot of long walks too, depending on which classes you need to get to. And it's really nice here. I really enjoy it, and I think I'll stay for a while. I'm not sure about Kayla and Priya, what your thoughts are on in general, but the main thing I miss from Florida is the beach, and everything else I feel like DC has.
I feel like I have to build upon Gloria's thing for commuting. I think maybe my DC tip, I have been very big into having commuting shoes because I do rely on the metro and I do tend to walk a lot, and I never really know what my day will look like, if that means like we have after work events that I have to walk to. So I always have a pair of sneakers on when I'm on the metro, and then a pair of flats in my bag. And that is probably my biggest hack. And it's like kind of nice seeing other people on their work commute also do that too. But yeah.
Just reading off a question from the chat. Obviously, you all are super involved in the Graham Center, but is there any other involvement at your time at UF that was very pivotal in shaping your experience in public policy? And I'll start off with Kayla.
Yeah, I have to say, my senior year, I was a part of the Rights Scholars cohort. And I think that was a really awesome experience for me. I was in a really diverse cohort that year, with just seeing other different campus leadership people in like student government, from just various different organizations, religious, political organizations. And I thought that was an awesome, really experiential kind of class. It was a bit of an adjustment just because it was Zoom the whole year. But we had some really robust conversations and just kind of discussions about like UF and just the community as a whole. And definitely recommend anybody interested or just want to talk a little bit more about Rights Scholars. Happy to facilitate that. I highly recommend that program.
Thank you. And then Priya, same question for you. What experiences outside of the Graham Center at UF really shaped your public policy experience?
I did a lot of direct service work outside of like I did mostly the Graham Center, to be honest, but the rest of my time was doing direct service work. So for me, that meant volunteering in hospitals and actually seeing what the systems that I wanted to work on looked like in practice. And I think the most important thing that I did was a internship that I did through my health disparities minor at the Pediatric Pulmonary Center at UF. I just had a really, really wonderful mentor who had been working in the field for a long enough time that she really understood where the issues in the system were and helped me understand how to evaluate health care as a system, and then also see it in real life while I was working on the things that I was doing through that internship. So I think whatever your field is, learning how to actually get on the ground and see what's happening is really helpful.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you for sharing. And then Gloria, what opportunities at UF did you take advantage of outside of the Bob Grant Center that shaped your experience in public policy?
Yeah, so I think something I did at UF that really helped me understand public service more, and I really started on a local service level and then went to state and then federal, kind of like working through the levels of policy. Back at UF, I actually was part of a student community relations advisory board with the city of Gainesville. And this is kind of something that students can get involved in, even if you're a transient, you're there for 4 or less years, you can still be part of a community board, which I hadn't even realized coming into the city. And that work was really cool. I got to meet a lot of people in the local community that I never would have otherwise if I stayed with my experience completely on campus solely. And actually followed me into Tallahassee, where I actually served on the municipal code enforcement board there and was able to learn a lot more about just how cities work, you know, the nitty gritty, neighbor disputes, things like that. And I saw it all there. So it helped me understand a little more about what public service is day in and day out.
Thank you so much for sharing, Gloria. Next question in the chat. What is your advice for students trying to break into the policy field for the first time who have never had internships or not necessarily have connections, and then starting off with Kayla?
Yeah, so I think probably my biggest tip, and maybe just kind of something that I had learned when I was going through just the application process my senior year in college, is there within the scheduling and administration kind of space with jobs, that is a great opportunity for early career folks. And I I like many undergraduate students felt like, oh, like we can just jump into policy analyst work immediately out of college, but that really isn't the case. A lot of the times when you are applying for jobs, like most of the times they're looking for you to have the right connections or at least have like a few years of experience like working within that specific policy matter. But I think within scheduling, from my role within NASA and now at education, it really allows you to form some interesting, intimate connections. And you're kind of at a really good vantage point within like a political office, being able to just see how other offices kind of communicate because you're like the first line to your principal, and just being able to liaise with internal and external stakeholders, and also just working a very like high pressure job and such a fast paced job too. Definitely very transferable in movement to whatever you want to go towards next. But that experience as a whole, I would definitely like if an opportunity like that were to come available, definitely jump on it. It's been really shaping for me, and just being able to see how the political space just works from that vantage point, being in a scheduling and advanced team.
Thank you so much for sharing. And then Priya, if you could go ahead and answer the same question. Any advice you have for students who don't have past internships or connections and how they can like break into the public policy sphere?
Yeah, so that's something that used to really stress me out too. When I was in college, I didn't have any connections that got me my first job or my second job, to be honest. So neither in the state government or when I went on the Hill, which I don't think is the most common. I think I got lucky in a lot of ways, but it's possible. So I think one, you're still in college. Also, even when you're out of college, like you can still get internships. you can still kind of learn the skills that you need to break into the policy spaces that you want to break into. It's always possible, but really focusing on how the skills that you do have transfer to policy spaces is really useful, I think. And also, like, there's a lot. My first job was not political, it was non-political. It was in an agency at the state government. And so that meant I really did just get to focus on the skills that I had. And that's what made me successful in that role, less so than knowing people or having like past policy internships.
Thank you so much, Priya. And then Gloria, if you could go ahead and share any advice you have for people who have past internships or connections and they want to break into the public policy sphere.
Yeah, so seconding everything that was said previously, but I also want to mention, if you're here or watching this recording, you do have connections in public service. The Bob Graham Center is a very vibrant network of people, both, current students, current staff, and past students, past staff. There's a ton of people who can help you on your journey. So definitely don't feel like you're unqualified or, don't have enough movement or experience in this space. I will say my 2 federal policy internships that I did while I was in grad school, I got each of them on the second application around, not the first. And they were also cold applications. I didn't know anyone who was working in those specific committees or offices. So it really speaks to the fact that, once you get to DC, there's a lot of like whispering about like you have to know someone and you have to have a warm intro. And it is true in some cases, but it's really exciting for policy people to see someone with like a tech background or a science background or a medical background or something else come into their space with an intent to do something related to that experience they've had. So I wouldn't discount it. I would view it as a strength and then write it into your applications with that context.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you so much. For our next question, so someone asked, as students, it can be nerve-wracking to make big decisions about our career when it feels like the stakes are so high, obviously so much pressure. In your search for jobs and internships, how do you know you're making the right decision, if at all, especially as you transition out of college and through different roles? And then starting off with Kayla.
Yeah, so I would say kind of touching on like my previous answer, I will say when I was a senior in college, I definitely went through a vacuum portal of applications and submitting stuff for stuff that's just on the Hill and all of these just like whatever bulletin board posting that they like weekly would send out, and just like not hearing back. And that oftentimes felt a little frustrating and very discouraging to me. But kind of banking on the internship experience that the Bob Graham Center had given me, kind of tapping into some connections and just reaching out to people that I had met during that experience, opened up like huge doors. I never thought that one connection would be able to help me get through the presidential personnel office and into NASA. And originally when she had told me like, oh, this would be a scheduling and administrative job for the head of NASA, at first, like I thought like, I don't know. But I'm like glad that I took that chance into that space just because it helped me get my feet wet and being in DC in public service and just navigating a political office. And NASA, my time there, it was also a really unique opportunity because NASA had such a really small small political team, and being able to just see all these different policy shops kind of helped me make a bit more of an informed decision for career goal wise what I wanted to do. So I think my best tip would be like, even if your gut is telling you like maybe if you're feeling a little uncertain about taking a job, maybe like weigh it out and see what opportunities it could open up. Because I feel like now that I've had this experience being on a scheduling and advance team, I feel a bit more informed about other opportunities that are in this political space within communications, working on like a digital team or being in press or, being policy and in a legislative office, and just being able to see all of these different shops work together in a federal agency. I feel like it's made me more informed about my next steps and movement for me.
Thank you, Kayla. And then for Priya, same question. In your search for jobs and internships, how did you know you were making the right decision, especially as you transition out of college and through different roles?
Yeah, I put a lot of pressure on myself to like, and I still put a lot of pressure on myself to feel like I'm making the exact right decision for whatever I'm doing next. And what I've actually found is that making the next best decision, which is a little different, has always served me really well. So like if something seems interesting, if I think I'm going to build skills by doing it, and if I think it's something that I'm passionate about, and I think will make the world a better place, then I usually will take the opportunity. And I think it's really hard to say whether or not a decision is perfect, but I've been really happy with all of the decisions I've made as I've transitioned through my career so far. Uh, and some of it is just like knowing that each experience is what you make of it. And it's you get out what you put in, and all of those cliches. So I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. Like whatever decision you make, you will make it a good experience and you'll learn from it. And if it isn't exactly what you want to do, you know that you just go on to something the next time that's a little different. Everything's a learning experience.
Yeah, most definitely. And then for Gloria, the same question. How did you kind of transition and figure out that you were doing the right path post college and through different roles?
Yeah, I think honestly, I agree with what everyone said as well. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong decision at this point in our lives. I know it can be intimidating when you go to panels with people and you see like so and so did this and then X, Y, Z throughout the past 10, 20, 30 years of their life, and it feels so linear. But that's never the case when we're looking at it from where we stand now. A lot of decisions and the meaning behind decisions and the value behind them only becomes clear in retrospect. And I think it's really important for us, since we're moving forward in time, to think about what we can get out of something, what we can learn about the team we're going to be a part of. If it feels right, a lot of people might discount the fact that some things just feel off to them. I guess one example, the hardest decision I've made was probably coming out of my master's program, because I knew that was going to be one of my last major academic pivots, which present an obvious opportunity to jump to something entirely new. Even my master's degree in data science was one of those pivots, since I hadn't written a single line of code before I started it, and it felt kind of crazy at the time, and it maybe was. But at that time, I was still in the mindset of, oh, I'm exploring, I'm learning new things and doing all this. But then coming in to work with the DoD, that was a space I had never touched before. I hadn't worked for the defense industry, I didn't know much about it. And I really wanted to be able to preserve that positive difference I was making in the world, like Priya mentioned. And so I did do a lot of soul searching about it before I accepted the opportunity. And I just realized that the feelings were right. The team I had talked to, everyone I interviewed with, they were super nice. A lot of them had been in that industry and in that space for decades, and we're still there at the same firm. And so, I think I kind of called myself by saying that, whatever I learn, I will use it to make a positive change in the world. Like if I'm not doing it right this moment, I will use it in the future in other ways that I can't even see currently.
Most definitely.
Will add to, I think Gloria, Priya, and I've talked about this as well. It's okay to not have a 5-year plan. I know a lot of times, like when I was in college, like that was heavily stressed on me to like have all of this figured out. But even as a 25-year-old in DC, I still don't know what like end game is. And it's okay that you don't have all the answers right now. But from that experience that you have done, like, yeah, maybe it wasn't great, or that's not the kind of work that you want to do. That makes you that much more informed about what next steps you can do. And you did gain something out of it. So definitely take it day by day. And it's okay if nothing is figured out right now.
My next question is actually for Kayla. So since you did the Tallahassee internship program, how do you feel that experience helped you get a job at the White House or on the Hill in DC? And then how do you transfer those skills from internship to internship? And how did you follow up on the connections from an internship maybe you did through the Tallahassee program or the Washington, DC program? And how did that help you in your career? And if you need me to repeat any part of that, let me know.
Okay, so I will tackle, you said the last part, like connections, like if I still keep up with people within the internship program.
Yeah, how did you maintain those, like foster those connections from Tallahassee internship or Washington in like your career now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think something that you kind of learn while you're up here in this space too is just like how you keep up with some of your connections. And oftentimes, like the coffee networking game can kind of feel a little intimidating. But sometimes it's just like, I even just like going on like a walk, I like it sparks kind of a memory back from that internship experience. And then I'll just like shoot a text message to someone from my internship cohort. I have like a number of friends from that cohort that are now in law school. So I actually had just reached out to one of my good friends that I had lived with, Jessica Martinez, maybe a couple weeks ago, just to check in on her and see how she is. Because something that I had learned from that internship experience within that cohort is it's really important to stay in touch with those people, because maybe 10, 15 years down the road, we're all assuming things, are kind of going to plan and going well for us. Like we'll be in those positions of office and power and like working in those spaces. So just like staying in touch with them is really important, and just kind of reaching out to them. And I will say within that office too, I still keep in touch with like my legislative affairs supervisor, Carlos Nathan, and he was super helpful to me when I was applying to jobs my senior year. We would FaceTime like every couple of weeks or so, and he would just kind of give me some tips for just the interviewing and just keeping in touch with people within like state politics if that was something that I had wanted to pursue. And but really great mentor. And my one connection that I had, the Florida political director, the Biden Harris campaign, she had worked for Senator Nelson for close to 18 years. And, at the time in 2020, I never thought like, wow, in 21, I would end up serving as his special assistant, and principal management now being a skill that I have, having worked 2 years with him. So at the moment when you make these connections, it might not make sense, like how, like what use or like utility it is to like keep with them. But sometimes it's like, oh, like wow, this person really like had shaped me in such a way. But yeah, and I think you had a few other questions too, but
This person was specifically asking because you did the Tallahassee program. Just how do you feel that experience at the state level shaped your experience in DC?
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly that the whole Tallahassee internship program, like that was really my way into politics. I feel like that had launched my political experience and career as a whole. So that had informed me on one, like reaching out for coffee and just like asking people how they like came about in their professional lives. And I think that is really important too, and just like learning like not everybody has the same pathway to like where they got and how they got there. And just kind of like learning about different like backgrounds and experiences that they took to get there. A lot of the times here in DC too, I think that is something like you can absolutely reach out to people love to talk about how they got to where they are. And that's a valuable thing that I had learned from Tallahassee, and just how to like work in a political office too.
Priya and Gloria, have anything to add just kind of around this idea of how do you follow up with connections post internship and like kind of use those for your career?
Yeah, I think this is something I was really interested in, especially when I just had graduated. And I honestly missed a lot of the professors I was close with, and people I had worked with and things. So I think Kayla had mentioned, sometimes you're literally on a walk, or for me in the energy space, there's a lot of energy geeking out that we do. So I'll listen to a podcast or I'll see something on the news, and that's a really good excuse to send something of value, information, to a connection you have, but also slip in a, hey, how's it going? How's your company? How's your job? How's your family? It's just a really good I think, thing to do. So when you think of that, it can stimulate conversation with those connections. Also, I had like this habit of doing handwritten Christmas cards for a while and paperless post. It became paperless post when it became awkward to keep asking for addresses for people. So usually if I have time during the winter holiday, I'll do like a big paperless post Christmas card kind of email.
And I have one more tip. Just because I had recently gone through a transition, definitely thank yous. That is something that I think doesn't come enough in this city. Probably kind of going back towards like DC insider tips. This is a very like Gen X thing to do, but a lot of people love this, is handwritten thank you notes. It really goes a long way. You might not realize like just how you had made someone's day by thanking them for all the experience and advice that they had given you along the way. And that was something that I had done immediately after my time at NASA, and just kind of, and that also just had stimulated to me like, oh, I need to reach out and talk to these people from my internship experience back in Tallahassee and let them know like, hey, this is where I'm going now.
My next question that I have is for Gloria. If you could share more about your transition from undergrad to grad school, and if you took a gap year and how you navigated that. This Markel, who asked if she's considering doing a gap year, so she's kind of wanted advice on what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Priya also took a gap year, but I took a gap year that was, I didn't intend for it to be a gap year at the beginning. I went to Tallahassee. I was doing state level energy policy for Florida and Virginia for a trade association that I was working with at the time. And then COVID hit while I was in the middle of my year there. So I actually went back home to Jacksonville. And it was during that time that I actually decided to apply for grad school in the first place. I only applied to one program. It's the program I went to. And the reason I did is because it was located in DC and I wanted to move up here. So I was pretty like directionally focused with that. But honestly, if COVID hadn't happened, I don't know. I could have taken multiple gap years. I think it's a great opportunity, a great choice, especially if you want to go back for master's or PhD or other continuing education in the future. Because when you go into those programs, I've noticed at least the colleagues I had who went straight from undergrad tended to take a little more time exploring what they wanted to do, whereas the what are they called? Not colleagues, but my fellow students, who came in after a few years of working, actually knew exactly what they wanted out of that degree. They're usually shorter, like a master's for me could have been 1 to 2 years. And so it's really nice to come in with that targeted approach and having that past real world experience, so to speak. But you can also get that during college. So, gap year is pretty much a personal decision, but I don't see really many disadvantages to it.
And then Priya, if you want to go ahead and touch on a gap year versus not gap year and the transition that comes along with that.
Yeah, so I don't have any graduate degrees yet. So for my parents, every year that I am working is a gap year. I think for me, I was like pretty sure when I graduated college that I wanted to get higher, like more education. But I wanted to experience the workforce first and really decide what I needed. And actually, I think working on the Hill has shown me that like it's not as necessary to get a master's as I thought it was when I was an undergrad. I think it's really field specific and really policy area specific. But there's a lot of people in DC who just continue working, continue building those skills, because there is kind of unless you really know what you want to do and what you want to get out of a grad program, there is a cost value to taking time off of working and building like actual connections and skills and like work product that you can show the next job that you have that you've done.
And this will probably be our last question. So it is, do you have any advice for graduating seniors looking for jobs in the federal government in DC once they graduate, especially in terms of tapping into connections they've made throughout internships and asking for potential job openings? So maybe just like how to go about conversation. And I'll start off with Kayla.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gloria had posted some resources too on this. I don't think I had talked a little bit about like the Plum Book and just the presidential personnel office process as a whole. I'll happily drop the link, but the Plum Book definitely like informs you about just all of the Schedule C position that are available within the presidential administration. And there are a lot of opportunities within the presidential personnel office. And there are so many special assistant and different advisory roles that I would happily, like, you should definitely take a look at that as a resource. I had no idea that there were these Schedule C positions that support the administration. When I was in college, I just kind of knew about like Senate confirmed positions. So these are not Senate confirmed positions, but they help carry out a lot of really crucial functions within the presidential administration. And I think that is a great resource to look into and just like look at different opportunities at federal agencies as a whole.
And then Priya, going off that same question, any advice you have for seniors, graduating seniors, and how they can tap into their network from past internships, and maybe just ways to go about conversations?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, and one of them is not answering your question, but I know that Gloria and I both have state and local experience, and that's been really, really vital to the way that I understand how federal government works and the ways in which that I create policy and the ways that I navigate policy. So I really, really highly recommend. I know it's not as like flashy as working in federal government, but working in state and local politics really impacts people, and it is a really interesting way to understand how policy is passed down and actually impacts people. The other advice I would give is when you are looking for a job, when you're getting coffees with people, which is what they call just networking in DC, or when you're like tapping on people who you used to work with, it depends on the person and you know the person, but it's usually understood to be in bad taste to say, hey, I am looking for a job. If it's someone you're really close to and they know you're graduating, they might assume, and then you can have that conversation. But usually the conversation should start with like, here's where I'm at in my life. What's going on with you? Like, be polite as you're having, like, everyone knows this, but I think it's easy to forget when you're really stressed, which I was when I was looking for a job during college. So just like do all the normal things and then maybe say like, hey, I'm graduating, like who else should I be talking to? And what do you think are some good opportunities for me to look into? Just be subtle.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that advice. And then Gloria, same question, just any advice you have for graduating seniors who want to work on the Hill and just kind of how they should go about conversation.
Yeah, so graduating seniors who want to work in the federal government in general, not just the Hill, I just put a link in the chat. It could be a link, usajobs.gov. Basically, get really familiar with it. It's not the most fun website to trawl through, but if you put all the filters correctly and do a federal resume correctly, there are ways to get a job just simply applying through there. It might sometimes feel like throwing your resume into the abyss, where a warm intro is really useful to talk to. I would say, for these connections, it's not just transactional. Like, you're not just there to get a job necessarily. Tap into people who have been federal public servants who've worked in the federal government and see what they have to say about what their work was like. Maybe you can learn from them. Maybe you can learn some things you like or don't like about the specific path you want to follow. And I definitely want to reiterate a point that came up earlier, which is don't be afraid of internships. Even after you graduate, it's totally okay to take an internship, especially since a lot of federal internships turn into jobs. They're part of the pipeline. And so just be aware that you're going to be more likely to be hired into an office usually if they already know you and have worked with you. And internships and fellowships are a really good way to do that in the federal government.
Thank you so much, Kayla, Priya, and Gloria for speaking today. I know I found it super insightful, and I'm sure everyone else did. We're going to call our attention to Marianne because she has an announcement to make.
Oh, thanks, Paulina. I just wanted to say a really big thanks to everyone who dialed in on the Monday after homecoming to listen to this presentation. I know it's been a busy weekend with the game and whatnot, and especially thank our speakers, Gloria, Priya, and Kayla, as well as our moderator, Paulina. She was a pro at managing all the questions from the audience, and I think we captured everything. Just a couple final things that I wanted to underscore and share with people about the recording. A colleague and I were talking offline, and while we're paraphrasing here, Kayla was describing how students who have explored specific areas of involvement and interest proactively are more compelling than those who express a general desire to do something or to get a job. And Dr. Bird and I both think that this is incredibly important as you're making your transition from college to the professional world, because being able to talk about your experiences and skills in a specific manner will only help you more. And also something else that a few of you said, and anyone who takes my class or works with me knows that I say this, I'm a big fan of the gap year or years, as in my case, it was 8 of them. And really knowing what you want to get into before you go and spend your time and money on a graduate course. Kayla's nodding too. I probably said it to her even back in 2019. And also, just for everyone here, please remember to subscribe to our newsletter. It is chock full of opportunities in DC and elsewhere. And also check out our faculty and staff pages on the Bob Graham Center website and our student assistants. You will find a breadth of people involved in different opportunities. I worked in New York City for almost 20 years in public service. You've got all of these great alums here who work in DC, and we all want to be a resource to you. And finally, this recording will be posted on our website as well as our YouTube page later this week. It will be emailed to everyone who is here, and I'm also going to take all the resources in the chat. Thank you, Gloria, Priya, and Kayla, for dropping those in there. I'll compile them and make sure everyone gets those as well. And if that's it, I'll stop the recording and end the meeting. Thank you all so much for your day and your time and efforts.